Good evening, good evening, good evening. Thanks for sharing me out. Kim and Nene, how y'all doing? It's definitely good to see you here. Thanks for stopping by. G fam, as always, in the house. How y'all doing this evening? I was trying to finish my little sandwich before I went live, but I clicked the button. I clicked the wrong button. I'm like, oh well. What's going on, people? Everybody had a good Saturday? It is Saturday, right? Yeah. Everybody had a good Saturday. I don't know, the days started running to each other since I don't get up and go to work anymore. So I just every day is just the next day. So I be forgetting what day is what day is what day. We doing good, G. How's it going on your side? Hey, what's up, Harvey? What's going on? Woo. Oh, okay. I'm about to go check that out. I'm glad everything's all right with you, Harvey. Glad it all worked out. Yeah, I'm definitely glad it all worked out. Yeah, but ain't nothing much going on. I watched this show yesterday. Kind of took me back. The some of the early days. So what's going on, everybody? Let me share myself out one more time. What's up, Milo? Well, welcome in. Welcome in. Make sure you hit the thumbs up. Make sure you also hit that red button, turn it gray. Oh, okay. That's pretty cool. No, as a matter of fact, my wife Aunt Maddie just got off the phone with our oldest son. In fact, he's ready to take his daughter skating. I haven't been skating since, dang, I can't even remember the last time I went skating. Um, it was a documentary I watched yesterday. G. Um, and it's centered around Washington D.C. and the events that happened, back in the '80s. It's called crack, cocaine, corruption, something else, conspiracy. It talked about the how the crack epidemic started, and you know, I pretty much remember when it started in DC. Now I know they said it started out, out in LA on the West Coast. Oh, Harvey, how you do that? You gotta be careful, bruh. Yeah, but I remember back in the '80s when it first hit, the area, and it was really bad. I mean, at that point, DC was they called DC the murder capital of the country. I remember getting up, and reading the paper, and at every end of every year, they would list, and yeah, they had a whole list of the people that were killed because, due to the crack epidemic. If they could identify who they were, they would have John Doe or they would have their name. And it wasn't unusual to see a couple of people that I knew, that had been involved one way or the other. They were either using or selling. And I think that everybody during that time knew somebody that was affected by, you know, the crack epidemic. But the crazy thing after watching the documentary was how cocaine got into the country, and how the government turned a blind eye. And once people start, because people figure out a way to make things cheaper. Cocaine was considered a high end drug. I don't know. I was making TikTok. I was making a vlog for YouTube last week. Mm. But that's good. I'm glad you're all right, bro. Yeah, but how cocaine was considered high end, and if you had to have money, it was mostly the rich, okay, rich people, and mostly the majority Caucasian, and so they were saying that along the time when Richard and some of y'all may be too young to remember, some may remember when Richard Pryor caught himself on fire, and they came to find out that he was what they call freebasing cocaine, and the guy kind of explained it in the documentary how it works, and something he did wrong, and he set himself on fire, and that's when people started to figure out how to not have to snort it, but they could figure out a way to smoke it. And then it got to the point where people were buying it, but they had to figure out how to make it work for them, how to weigh it, and how to basically become chemists. And then of course somebody figured out, well, I want it readily available. So it ended up turning, somebody created the cook form, which was crack. And they fix it up, they break it up, cut it up, chop it up, smash it up into little chunks, and then they would sell it. And that's how it all started. It was crazy how all of this transpired, and it went into the urban communities, and it destroyed, not only destroyed people, but it destroyed whole communities and set back of some generations in some families. So it was crazy. And like I said, yeah, yeah. But the thing with the crack, and I'm trying to get away from calling it an epidemic, but that's pretty much because that was the word that they used to scare people. They made it into something that I don't know if it was an epidemic or crisis. I mean, it was bad, but I think they oversold it, and they made it seem as though it was this thing that was tearing up the country. And I even heard people saying like people were doing different things. Crime went up and things like that, but they were talking about it'll make you kill your mother, and I don't know about that. No, but it took its toll on a lot of families. Not just the people that were using, but the people that were dealing it. And it was crazy how during the early '80s they were it was just abundant, how and they show how it would get into the country, and how the government just like hey, it's getting in here. But the way that it was getting in is that it was the government facilitated it, all to help some crazy little teeny country that really had no national security reasons, or I mean, there was just no reason for them to be in their in that country's business. Talking about Nicaragua. But I said it's sad the way that things turned out. And a lot of it was the burden was laid at the feet of the African American community. As if we were the only ones that were using it. And instead of trying to figure out a way to help, because see, if you don't have supply is no good without demand. That is the bottom line. You can't sell something to people that they don't want. So if you can get people cleaned up, if you can find a way to help them with their problem, find out first why they turn to the drugs, and try to figure out a way to help them get off the drugs, then you cut out the supply. The demand. But because money, in the end, it's all about money. That's what it all boils down to. When you break it down to the lowest common denominator, it's about money. That's what it's all about. So if I can get somebody to buy it, and a lot of times they were selling it to their family members. They didn't care. They just wanted to sell it, get the money. I was watching. They had a couple of guys that were into selling it, and the dude was like, he bought as many as 75 pair of tennis shoes, and he would wear them. See, he would wear them maybe once or twice, chuck them to the side. Now, I guess when you were making money like that, it really didn't matter. What I learned is that when you have to work hard for your money, and you buy things, you tend to hold on to them a little longer, and you cherish them a little more, and you take a little bit more care of them because they mean that much to you, because you know that you work for this, and so you put a little bit more effort into it. I know for me, the first time I paid $100 for a pair of tennis shoes. First of all, it hurt me to do that, because my kids like, you always get the same shoes. They cost for $40. To me was too much for tennis shoes. But okay, I understand. But I like what I like, so I spent $100 for a pair of tennis shoes. Let me tell you something. I wore those shoes until the soles was flapping. I'm trying to tell you, I got my $100 worth. Hey, keto girl and more. It's all right. Better late than never. And like I always say, if the light is on, you ain't late. If you get here and ain't no lights on there, that's a problem. But thank you for coming, honey. You be safe out here in these streets. Yeah, I definitely would got my $100 out of them shoes. Because nowadays they paying $200-300 for shoes. Mm-mm. Nope. It's but that time in DC, was really, really crazy. I mean, it was like, I remember watching, some of the movies they were talking about the gang life in LA where they would have drive-bys, and I mean it was like that here. And it was nothing to read the paper. Like I said, at the end of the year, they would have the list of how many, of all the people that they could that were killed. I Keto, appreciate you. They had the names of the people, and it was nothing for it to be 400 to 500 people killed a year, and that was just in the drug trade. I mean, it was like there was times when you get 10, 15 people killed in a day when they had the turf wars. I'm like, man, you see stuff and you're like, oh, I would see it, other places. I'm like, dang, that's really crazy. But then it came here, and like I said, everybody that the majority of the people that lived in DC, I am quite sure, that somebody knew somebody that was affected by that whole thing, whether they knew somebody that sold or they knew somebody that used. You know, it was crazy. I mean, it was really, really crazy, and they put it all on the African American community, but when they signed the crime bill, I think when Bill Clinton finally signed his in '94, they said that in LA, 2/3 of the people that use crack were white. But by the time they had signed the crime bill in '94, no one that was, you know, unless you were a person, anybody that was any Caucasians, okay, I'll say the way they said it, um, there were no white people that were convicted of crack related federal offenses. The prison, you know, population exploded, but the majority were African Americans and other people of color, because when they changed the rules, if you got caught with, let's say, a a gram of crack, you got the same sentence as if you were caught with a gram of regular cocaine. I'm like, that's kind of crazy. So if you had, let's say, 50 grams of white cocaine, white powder, and you had, I guess I don't forget how it goes, but you got the same sentence if you had, whether you had a whole lot of cocaine or crack. That's just how it was. I was like, man, this is, I really didn't know how, how that went, because, I was never really into it. All I knew is that there were a bunch of people dying, and they put it out there as if it was just black people. That white folks didn't smoke crack. That all they did was snort it. But I'm like, man, that's crazy. Yeah. Hold on one second, y'all. Yeah, but I really didn't get into it then. But then when I saw this documentary, I was like, man, I started looking at it, and they were talking about LA, and I'm like, okay, well, I ain't really too concerned. Then they start talking about DC, and I'm like, wow, I remember these days. It was crazy. There were certain parts of the city that you just didn't go to unless you were in the business, or you were trying to purchase. There were certain places you just didn't go because at any moment something could pop off. It was really a really crazy time. And like I said, I would look in the paper, or saw people that I grew up with, people that I knew, people that I worked with. I'm like, man, and to see the effects of what it did to people. There was one lady, she hadn't seen her son in a year and a half. She had got down to 95 pounds, and they talked about how in the women, that's who they mainly targeted, the media did. And that's why the term crack baby came up. Big Ben, because once they started to destroy, and bring down the women in the community, well, now you're messing with the population. You can't, the women were the backbones of, and still are. I'm doing great, Ben. How are you? They're the nurturers. So if you take away the people that nurture the children, and you already you've already taken away their protection when you lock all the men up. So now you have these children that are running around that really have no guidance, and then you wonder why they act the way they do. Where you're setting them up to put them in the system, same system where their fathers are, or their brothers, or their uncles. So it's a cycle that continues to repeat itself. They had this one nurse who was going in, and she would, look through the files and test the people to see if they've been using drugs, and then if they were, she would interview them and ask them all these questions to find out how they get the drugs, or were they trading sex for money to get drugs, or whatever the case may be. And she was interviewing one lady, and the lady was like, well, I don't feel comfortable answering these questions, and I would like to know, what are you going to do with this information? And she was like, oh no, this information is for me, for my files. I'm doing a study, blah, blah, blah. But it turned out all she was doing was getting the information, turning it over to the police. They would come into the hospital, sometimes right after the women have had the babies, snatch them out, take them to jail. Then eventually they would ship them off to the penitentiaries, or the federal prisons, way away from their families. So now the kids, if you don't have relatives that can take the kids end up in foster care. So, and you know then they arrested one lady. They charged her with um, giving her child drugs through her umbilical cord while the umbilical cord was still attached. Now, it turns out the lady said she had, they said, two or three healthy children, two healthy children, and there was no, they didn't have any drugs in them or anything. And when, instead of them trying to get her help, and because I would imagine that when you're hooked on drugs, you can't fight it by yourself. I've seen people go through withdrawals. So yeah, it's a crazy thing, but if you take the time to help the people and try to find some kind of counseling, some kind of way to, if they don't go, then fine. But if somebody's asking for help and they're begging for help, the least you can do is try to figure out a way to help them. Now you can see the difference in how this works from a societal point of view. Is that back then with the crack situation, they never offered, to help people, any kind of rehab or nothing. It was okay. We just gonna lock you up. So you got treated. If you were a drug user, you were treated the same way as the drug dealer. But now with the opioid issue, you got rehabs popping up everywhere. Why? Sure, we all know why. Have a different clientele that's using the opioids. They're like, okay, you could turn your opioids in, and we won't hold it against you. We'll try to find you, some help and rehab, and we'll take good care of you. You using crack, and you live in a certain neighborhood or a certain economical level, well, we'll lock you up. We can't help you. You have to figure it out on your own. It's really crazy, but this is the country that we live in. And they say this is our country. I beg to differ. You know, I do. I really beg to differ. It's really really crazy how they have these level of expectations, and they tell us that okay, you can do this and you can have this and you can have that, and it's almost like Charlie Brown and Lucy when she pulls the football up when he go to kick it. They tell you got all these things and we're working with you and working for you, but when the time comes for you to get whatever it is, they move the goalposts. But that is, they saying there's no difference. Oh, there's a big difference. Like I said, when they had that uprising at the Capitol, you saw the difference. I mean, it was plain as the nose on our faces. I hear people saying that, there's no such thing as white privilege. I was just looking at a video earlier today where in Texas, they tried to change the some of the rules in a school that was predominantly white, where they were going to have the kids do this, culture training because they had one lady, her son came home, and one of the kids had told a joke, and they asked you, well, how do you get blacks out the tree? And the little boy was like, I don't know how. The little white boy said, you cut the rope. I'm like, I mean, these are the jokes that kids are telling. And these kids don't make up these jokes. It just didn't pop in their head. It's something that they learn from their parents or their grandparent or their uncle or their somebody else in the neighborhood. But somebody taught somebody that joke that stemmed from a different time, maybe a different time. I don't know. But they tell me these things don't exist. That it's equal and fair playing field. Yeah, well, if that was the case, these people are marching down the street. They wouldn't be met with tear gas and pepper spray and tanks and rubber bullets and all that kind of foolishness. I mean, how do you walk up to a state capitol with machine guns and rifles and all kind of stuff? And I mean, and you just standing there hollering at the police and cussing at the police, threatening to run over top of the police, and they just stand there. They don't say nothing. They're holding the line. And I'm sure you could. I mean, they were so close. You could feel the words. They would not just hear them, but you could feel the words coming out their mouth. Yet you got other folks that go marching down to the Lincoln Memorial, and they had the whole Army Ranger crew out there. What they thought they was going to do? They was going to kidnap and take the statue of Abraham Lincoln sitting in the Lincoln Memorial. Really? Is that what y'all thought? I don't know. They thought they was going to spray graffiti all over the place. They was going to break windows, go looking to kill folk. That what they thought they was going to do? That's what they folks did. It's sad, man. It's really, really sad. And watching this documentary just reinforces some of the things that they want us to believe that, like I said, it's an equal and fair playing field. But am I supposed to believe the words that's coming out of your mouth or my lying eyes? Because I ain't seeing what you saying. You telling me it's equal, but I ain't seeing equal. So help me understand. Break it down for me. I mean, break it down like third grade, first grade math, because I really ain't understanding this stuff. And I try not to be, you know, keep politics and all that stuff, out of the channel. But you know, sometimes it just comes out. I really don't understand it. I'm 58 years old, and I've seen videos of, hey, what's going on, ATL? What's up, shawty? I remember watching the videos of the newsreels of, you know, folks marching, and they get met with the dogs and the billy clubs and the fire hoses. And then you fast forward, you got a whole nother generation of folks. It's basically doing the same thing, marching, protesting peacefully. Yeah, you have your riffraff every now and then, but for the most part, they're marching peaceful. They just want a couple of things. I certainly will, Shorty. I will let her know But yet now they're being met with pepper spray and tear gas and rubber bullets and tanks, police with riot gear. I was watching a documentary. They were showing how they turned the police into like these almost like armies. And they going in there with the machine guns and tactical wear. And hey, Cindy, how you doing? Thank you for coming through. And they running up in these people's houses with battering rams and all kind of stuff. Oh, the guys a little bit of they yeah. I'm not saying that that it's right to use drugs or smoke crack, but hell, I mean, you got somebody with just enough to fill up to put in the pipe, and you treating them like a Scarface or somebody. I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't understand it, and maybe it's not for me to understand. But I got grandkids who are young and impressionable, and they're going to grow up in this society, and I'm not saying that I had it bad, but I definitely would want them to have it better than me. Luckily, my kids are amazing parents. They are holding it down, and I am so proud of them for that. They look out for the kids and make sure that they are leading them in the right direction. And so I gather I really don't have a lot to worry about in terms of my grandkids, but there are other people that have grandkids and kids that aren't as fortunate, who don't have those parents that are able to guide them. Because now, like I said, this generation of kids are the babies of the babies that had babies. So you had parents that were 13 and 14 that had babies who had no clue about their own life. So now they have raised kids, and a lot of times, as they say, the apple don't fall too far from the tree. And I don't know, man. Now, I've seen a lot of things change, but a lot of things stay the same. These 58 years of mine, soon to be 59 in March. Somebody getting old. Ain't me. But we're gonna be all right. We can do this. Oh yeah, and another thing. Now I don't know if anybody remembers, but probably not. I'm aging myself, but the first Bush, he was the president, and he gave his first national address. And in this address, he reaches over and he pulls out an evidence bag full of crack. And he says, "Yeah, this was sold a couple of days ago across the street from the White House. Now there's a park across the street called Lafayette Park, right across the street from there. Well, now it's kind of because of all the stuff that had been going on is blocked off and all kind of stuff. But then, back then you could sit over in the park and, but the guy, but the backstory of that was that there was a DEA agent, well, a police officer that was working with the DEA, and they called him and said, "Hey, I need you to buy some cocaine from the park, in the park across the street from the White House. Go buy some crack." So he calls some young boy, crack dealer that he know, to come to the White House, come to the park back across the street from the White House so he can buy some drugs. Well, first off, oh, your cat's named Lafayette. Okay. First off, the little boy or the young man didn't know where the White House was. Now you have to not be aware of anything if you're living in DC and you don't know where the White House is. Which means he probably lived over on south side in southeast DC, over in the deep in the hood, and at that time and as well as now, you have your people that they really never went out of the off the block. So the guy told him how to get to the White House. He gets there and he buys the drugs. And he said he sees the people, walking over to the White House, but he really don't pay it no mind. So he said he was sitting there watching the president, and he said, "Damn, that was the evidence bag that I had." Well, what they did was they set the little boy up all for the crack was a prop, so that the president could get on TV and sell the fact that drugs were bought across the street from the White House. And that's how bad the crack epidemic had become, that they were selling it across the street from the White House. So this little young fella did almost 10 years in federal prison for selling drugs. He'd never been in trouble, no violent record, nothing. First time offense. He did almost 10 years because they wanted to make a point. And then they said something to the president about it. And he was like, well, he came over there and he sold the drugs. And, I can't feel sorry for him. I hope he got arrested. He should have got arrested, blah, 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 blah. But what they should have done, and I don't know if they did or if they didn't, but they probably could have had a case for entrapment. I mean, because it's not like the dude was going to be over there anyway. He didn't know where the White House was. So he just showed up because the dude called him and said, "Hey, dude, I need to buy some dope." He was an undercover. He never questioned it. And it must have been a good amount of money for the dude to travel all the way across town to another, the other side of DC to do that. But like I said, it turns out he got locked up for that. I'm like, man, that's crazy. The depths that they would go to make that point. And they made it seem like crack was the worst drug to ever hit the market. It was worse than heroin. It was worse than powder cocaine. It was worse than everything. And that's how they sold it. And then they start talking about the crack babies, where it turns out that maybe only 2% of the babies born at that time were on drugs. The mothers transferred the drugs to them. Yeah. Oh, I could. Yes, they had all kind of little crazy drugs. You know, but you know they needed something to, and then you got the people, and I get it. If you live in a neighborhood and it's crime ridden, all you want to do is get rid of the crime. So you start protesting in the streets, and you need the police to show up, and you need your Congress people and your mayors and everybody to do something. So they came up with this crazy, crazy, crazy crime bill that made crack the biggest drug, the most potent and powerful, worst drug ever, worse than heroin. Yeah, like I said, I remember those days. I remember some of the people that were either selling or using. And like I said, it destroyed a lot of people, a lot of families, a lot of communities. It set some families back, especially once you had these parents that were, separated, the mothers mostly that were separated from their kids. And like I said, if they took the kids and they either put them into foster care or you would send them with a relative. If you didn't have any relatives, a lot of grandparents were raising kids because the mothers were, you know, on drugs, doing things that they probably never would have done. But all because it all started with an illegal gun sales. The United States was selling arms to Iran to make money so they could feed it to the Nicaraguans to help them with their civil war to overthrow some dictator and all kind of crazy stuff. So in the meantime, they would trade they would pay for sell the arms to get the money, take the money, drops the money off down in Nicaragua, and then it's like, hey, we got these planes here. Can we put something on them? Sure. They were loading the planes up with cocaine and shipping them right to the United States. The government was doing this, but yet they act like they have no clue what's going on because everybody's getting paid. And it doesn't become a problem until somebody says, hey, I seen so and so with their hand in the cookie jar. Now all of a sudden it's a situation. That's how they do it, y'all. I it's sad, but it's life. It's a part of life that I saw it, but I didn't see it. And like I said, I didn't see the behind the scenes. I didn't know about a lot of the behind the scenes stuff, how this whole crack thing started and how they were shipping cocaine to the United States, and like any other entrepreneurs, you try to find a way to maximize your profit. And so which means you have to get more clientele. So if you're selling they were selling the powder, and they knew that the people, some people couldn't afford it. They figured out a way to make it cheap and addictive. Because the thing with drug addicts and how you become really addicted is because you're always chasing that first high. Because the first one is the best one. I remember the first time I smoked some marijuana. That I had, whew, you're always chasing that first high, and you will never, ever, ever, ever feel like that again. Because it's already been introduced into your body. But they keep chasing it and they keep chasing it. And eventually you get hooked. You can't stop because now it's in your blood. But what's sad is that, you have people that be crying out for help. If you don't have the right money, wow. Yeah, well, you had a lot of people that was mixing it, you know, wrong, trying to get it right. Yeah. I just never wanted to do that. I remember, I was when I got tired of smoking weed, they're like, well, when you get tired of smoking weed, you're gonna go to something else. When I got tired of smoking weed, I just stopped smoking. I did not want to because I saw the effects of what other things did and other drugs did. And I was like, I don't want to go that route. I mean, I wasn't that, yeah. I remember as a kid, there was a guy that lived down the street, and you know, growing up, he would, because I lived across the street from the playground. And he would come up, he played basketball. He was, talkative, and he was cool. Then one day I saw him. It was July, hot as Hades, and he's outside with this big old winter coat on, with boots and a hat. And this was like every day, summer, winter, fall. Come to find out, he just got hooked on some stuff, and it did something to his head. He was no good after that. I saw the effects of what drugs could do, and I was like, man, do I want to do this? And a lot of times people say, well, it can't happen to me. It won't happen to me. I got this. Mm-mm. A whole lot of folks said it won't happen to me. I won't get hooked. Shh. And they hooked. Got them. Hook, line, and sinker. You know. But I wish them well. But we've come up. Huh, man, time went fast this time. It is time to go. Well, Cindy, Keto, ATL Shorty, G Fam, Big Ben, Harvey, Milo. Thank y'all so much. Q and Nene, thank y'all for coming through. I appreciate y'all. I will be back Tuesday with another edition of Let's Talk. Conversation with Unc. I thank y'all so much for coming through. I appreciate y'all. I will see y'all Tuesday. And until then, be happy on purpose and know that I believe in you too. Peace.